Welcome to today's episode. We have Richard Wolf with us today, and he is an Emmy Award winner and multi-platinum composer, producer, musician, and professor from USC. And he has led a very successful career. Welcome, Richard. It is such an honor to have you come to our program today. So, Richard, I am a performer as a pianist, and I practice mindfulness. So we share a lot of similarities here. So I'm a little nervous here right now because there's so many similarities. I really want to get everything out of you and everything I want to learn from you. And I believe that's the case for our audience as well. So would you start sharing some of your experience, how you start mindfulness and how you patch that to your music career?
Well, I came to mindfulness and meditation through desperation, actually. You mentioned somewhat my career in music. I had been in the record business for years, and then I made a transition about 15, 16 years ago into the television business, which I thought was going to be less stressful. And I learned the lesson on that end. And I ended up one night in the emergency room with a panic attack. It looked like a heart attack. I thought it was a heart attack, but later on we discovered that it was a panic attack. And I never wanted to go through that again, so I went to therapy, and my therapist prescribed for me 20 minutes of meditation a day, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night. Now, when he said that, bells rang in my brain because I had tried to meditate since I was 17. When I was 17, I went to a Zen center, which was right around the corner from where I lived. I figured I'm 17 years old. It's time I get enlightened. So I went to the Zen center and learned how to sit zazen and follow the basic instructions, to sit in one of two painful positions and stare at a spot on the wall, right? Like Bodhidharma did for 9 years. Yeah, he was in a cave, right? And stared at the wall. So you stare at the wall and you follow your breathing and you don't think. And I found that to be quite challenging, but I tried and I kept at it. And in college, I did that again. And at the end of the sessions, I realized I'm not getting enlightened. I'm not made for this. I can't do this. Now, the therapist is telling me your medication is meditation. That's your cure. And so I decided, well, I better, really figure out how to do this. And I came across a book by an animal trainer who's also a meditation master, Mikham Rinpoche, who wrote a book called Training Your Mind to Be Your Ally. And he talked about training the mind like training an animal. And it was about repetition. And when the animal gets distracted, like the horse in his case, gets distracted and wants to go off the road, you just gently pull the animal back on the road. And he made this connection between the wild mind and a wild animal. And you can train a wild animal, you can train the wild mind. Now, you're a piano player, so you know what it takes in terms of training your body to be able to play the piano. You're training your mind, your body through practice, through repetition, right?
Yes.
It's constant repeating. And when you make a mistake, you don't beat yourself up. You flub some notes, you just go over the passage again, right? More slowly, you go over it again until you get it right. So I made the connection. I said, I'm a mediocre piano player. I'm not very good at this, but through practice, I'm able to play on records when I need to play, or live, or whatever it might be. So I'm thinking, maybe this meditation that I've been trying to master for decades is the same thing as playing the piano. It's the same thing as music. It's just practice. And when I get distracted, I don't beat myself up. What I do is I say, let's just do this over again. This part of the process, getting distracted. And so when I made that connection between musical practice and meditation practice, everything came together.
Awesome. That is a great connection there. We kind of all find a niche that we needed to have something to bring to kind of heal us if we are like nervous about something, right? So you mentioned about repetitions and perfecting our skills. Do you use that in your in the process of your creativity?
It depends on what kind of music you're writing. Since I'm 5 years old, I'm writing songs in my head, and I've written in many, many genres, and never incorporated mindfulness and meditation. And you don't need to. Of course, this great music has been written from Mozart to Miles Davis to Madlib, and these people never meditated, and they knew nothing about mindfulness. But if I'm writing a piece of music specifically that's geared towards being a nonverbal guided meditation that you would follow to calm you down, to get you focused in a peaceful way, then I'm trying to get myself into a state of calm focus, a meditative state, and then writing through that, and then listening back at home, writing in the studio, listening back at home and meditating to the music, at least getting on the first step of meditation while the music is playing to test it out. Is this really conducive to achieving a meditative state, to getting into a meditative state? Yeah, so I think that there are things about mindfulness and meditation practice that can help people in order to create or maintain a musical practice, but it's not essential. You know what I'm saying? That's, to me, the greatest value of a mindfulness practice, not making you a better musician, but making your life better.
Yes. You mentioned in your book not to create good music, but become a better human being, a better person, right? And that you can, spread that vibrance in a persona to the people around you, and that kind of spreads. So may I ask? It seems like your first method, you went to a Zen temple. That seems like really tough, facing the wall, and so therefore you have a turnaround. You wanted to use the music as a connection for people to get in touch with mindfulness, which is a very interesting turnaround for me, because usually when I work with my students, I say, use mindfulness to relax so you can perform better and focus better. But you are the other way around. Use different elements of music to reach that mindfulness. So how did you how would you work with your students in that approach?
It's to let people know. It's to let musical people know that because you are musical, you already have habits, sensibilities, skills ingrained within you because you are musical that you can use for this other practice or these other practices of meditation and mindfulness and insight, et cetera, that it's innate within you. You have this ability. I had struggled for decades to try and have a practice, and I couldn't do it until I realized just open the door. Just open the door between your musical self and meditation and the practice. And you'll see you have all these qualities already, qualities of dedication, the kind of patience you need, practice for the sake of practice, harmony, harmonizing your mind, body, feeling, embodied cognition. When you're a musician, it's your whole mind, body, feeling united, uniform, that's immersed in the music. And that's the state you're trying to achieve in meditation. That's the same kind of embodied cognition, the same kind of harmony between your mind, body, and your feeling. And the bridges between the two, you can go on and on and on. As I say in the book, I have 12 bridges, but there's many more than 12. But it sounded good to me.
And that's amazing. When I read it, I'm like, wow, this is every single way that you are very good at explaining how, and then, uncovering different ways, leading people into getting to, everybody listens to music. And so you're trying to show everybody you have your way to get into the core part of the mindfulness. I think that's That's very precious, very special to me. And because when I ask my students and who listens to music, everybody does, and they spend a lot of hours every day. But they never thought about, using music, they can kind of bridge into their core part of their psyche. I also wanted to ask you about this course that you teach, Music, Mindfulness Strategy and Practice for an Ever-Changing Field. That would totally relate to you as a producer. Would you share more about what you teach in the course, please?
Well, trying to get them all, every student, to adopt a practice and experience what it's like to have a daily practice and have a weekly day of mindfulness, and guide them in getting a practice. So every class, I'll ask each student, the classes are relatively small, so that I can ask each student how they practice. What are the obstacles that you're confronting? What are the hindrances? And then what are the benefits you might be seeing? And then if they have questions about their practice. So that's essential, but teaching them the 12 bridges between music and demonstrating, showing them, okay, this is Herbie Hancock, for instance, and what he says about how you mentioned to become a better human being, and that's what he talks about as a musician, that he listens to music as a human being first and foremost. Or I'll talk about experiences with Kendrick Lamar or J. Cole. I use musicians and their practices as examples, as role models of how meditation practice is adopted by other musicians and how it helps them and what they say about it. And then I have them compose what I call meditations on sound.
Yes.
And that could be any kind of collage they want to make from sounds. And those that are composers and producers, they produce original music. And whatever genre they're fluent in, they produce these meditations on sound. And we listen to composers that I call composers of silence and the beautiful mind. Composers ranging from Miles Davis to Pauline Oliveros to John Cage, that invite you and encourage you to deeply listen, to listen with your mind, body, and soul, and to listen to the interplay between sound and silence. And so they're exposed to these composers. So it's several levels of participation involved.
Wow. That sounds terrific. I wish I am there. I wish I was there to learn from you. How do you practice any particular method now? And do you find any particular method that speaks to you well, especially to your musical background here?
Yeah, I would say the bedrock of my meditation practices are breath-oriented meditation, breath work, number one, and tied for that, different kinds of listening. So with the breath work, there are different musical applications. When I'm listening to the breath, you're listening I've never heard of an instruction to anybody when they say follow the breath, listen to the sound of your breathing. I mean, to me, as a musician and musical people, that's like the most natural thing. Listen to what it sounds like. And so that's part of, what I do. And then counting the breath, dividing the cycle of breathing, the inhalation, then you hold, then you exhale, and then you hold that again, dividing that into 4 bars of 4/4 time, of 4 beats. So you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4 when you inhale, and then again when you hold, etc. But musicians count 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, right? And then on top of that, you hear notes with each count. It's different notes. Whatever notes appear in your awareness, those are the right notes at that time. So it makes it spicy when you can hear music in your own breathing, that you're listening to your breathing as if you're listening to music. And you end up not only composing music while you're doing this, because you're making, you're making music in your mind, is you're composing yourself. So it has this dual payoff. You're composing music while you compose yourself.
That sounds terrific. I love the breathing part, and that you have, the boxing that in this book as well, breathing in, holding 4, and breathing out, holding 4, and I think it's a great method that I do that in yoga too. One of the yoga teacher also teaches that, kind of regulating your breath, regulating your body. And so when your body and mind are in peace, your access to your inner psyche opens up more. I love this book, especially the chapter 8, where you have a lot of beautiful quotes from musicians, and really speaks to me. And I love it because I think the creativity part is, I'm a performer, so I don't really create. So I'm like really envy people who are so creative. Would you share with us more about how do you create, and is there a connection to your mindfulness, process there?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that all creative people probably, but I don't know much about from an internal position about, sculptors or visual artists or anything like that, but certainly creative musicians, you already have this capacity to subdue the discursive, analytical, judgmental part of your brain. Now, I don't remember learning this in high school about the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. I mean, I'm conjecturing that there's a relationship here. One hemisphere is in charge of analytical thinking, judgmental thinking, etc. The other hemisphere is more artistic, aesthetic, creative. And if you're a creative musician, so for some reason, somehow, you have this capacity to quiet down the analytical, logical, rational part of your mind that's always judging, and allowing the intuition, because creativity comes a large part from intuition and the subconscious, allowing those aspects of your mind and your soul to shine through. So you have this capacity when you're creative to sort of take advantage of the fact that you're quiet. It's like hitting a mute button. We have a mute button in the studio. You have different tracks. So you have the capacity to hit the mute button on thoughts and judging everything that I'm doing, and just let it flow. And just let that creativity, you get, in music you could say you get into a groove, right? What does that mean? Is like you're just letting the ideas flow. You're just going with it, not thinking too much about it, not adjudicating and evaluating everything. You're just letting the creativity flow. And that's, in music, that's natural. Whereas within meditation, we're sitting there and we're trying to achieve that state of flow, right? We're trying to quiet down the mind and subdue that analytical, discursive part of the mind. So that's where the connection is. Now, it can help that process if you are having problems getting too judgmental about what you're doing, getting too critical. Then you can use mindfulness to be aware of, I'm just getting too critical. I'm getting too judgmental. David Lynch, who wrote this book who practices transcendental meditation. I can't speak about TM because I've never experienced it, but he says that negativity is the enemy of creativity. And that's your own critic on your shoulder, always looking out and saying, no, that note is wrong. And, that turn of phrase is you going in the wrong direction. Whereas people like Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk, they said there are no wrong notes.
So I just learned from what you just said, that when the music flows naturally, you are actually relaxed because you need to be a certain relaxation for the music kind of to come out, naturally and spontaneously. But in the same time, your mind would be focused, right? Because you are trying to let the melody come out and flow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's the energy. You're allowing the energy of creativity to flow. You're not blocking that energy. You see, there's still energy. It's no longer the energy of you're judging things. Do I like it or dislike it? Is this good for me? Is it bad for me? You know, the fight or flight, and the rationalization and the analytical part of your mind. You're quieting down that energy, and you're allowing the energy of creativity and intuition to flow freely.
Okay, so the energy has to be unblocked and flow naturally in a certain relaxed state and non-judgmental state, right, to kind of flourish by itself and form its own, its own shape and size and, everything. And the beauty will come out that way, spontaneously. Okay, that kind of brought me to think about Mozart. Mozart, everybody says he's a godsend prodigy, and he already had his music in his mind. He just need to move his hands and fingers to kind of write it out. Almost feels like way that you just described. That's such a gift to create, and especially have the analogy with mindfulness there. Okay, so how do you inspire your students if they have no background in mindfulness? How do you make that connection with them?
If they have no background in mindfulness, I don't do anything through inspiration. I do everything through intimidation. I just threaten them. You better be mindful, or you'll get in trouble, get a bad grade. No, I mean, it's about the way they see themselves, the way they live with themselves, and how they look at living with themselves and living with their talents and their strengths and their weaknesses. And so it permeates every part of their lives in terms of, we talk about mindfulness, and there's different expressions of mindfulness and different interpretations. And my approach is to basically teach them to be aware of how they respond to what's happening in their lives, to have space, to have critical distance, and to realize that they don't have to believe in their thoughts, that these are just ideas, and they're by definition imperfect ideas. And, I'll quote J. Cole, who said, "I meditate because I don't want to be a slave to my thoughts." Or I'll quote Kendrick Lamar, who said, "I need to create the space in order to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing." And so it's about the whole approach to life. And I don't specifically tell them anything about creativity other than the discussion that we've been having about the suspending the judgmental part of your mind in your life in general. So you do the same thing as much as you can. I mean, this is not a perfect solution, but you try as much as you can to be non-judgmental, to be accepting of things that might be uncomfortable at the moment, and to coexist with them. So it's the same thing with allowing the creativity or the intuition to flow without squashing it with over-analyzation and over-criticism. So it applies to those same principles apply to your life as they apply to creativity.
Wow, that is really good because you're not really shaping your students' creativity, but you're shaping their views towards themselves and shaping their outlook towards the world. And then I remember Jon Kabat-Zinn said the mindfulness is moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness. So you keep bringing that non-judgmental part out. I think that it really kind of resonates with me, that thinking about how, like as a performer, you need to be very judgmental about your own performance when you practice. But on the stage, you have to let go all the judgments and just let it flow. That's kind of it's challenging, right? Thinking about that. Yeah, and able to execute those two extreme things at the same time. That's something fascinating to me. Okay, so Richard, do you do you have musicians who practice mindfulness and who have like similar to you?
Yeah, I mean, I know some composers and DJs who practice. I mean, I know a DJ that practices Zen. There's part of a group called Salt and Shepherd. I know a composer who also practices mindfulness meditation. A couple of them. One of them puts Alan Watts to music with the permission and cooperation of the Alan Watts estate. It's so in one case there's a sort of a deliberate application of mindfulness to music, trying to write meditative music. But in the other cases, it's about life. It's about life in general. It's about being a human being in the world, and living with yourself. And if you're going on stage and you're traveling and you're a DJ, having a practice of meditation and mindfulness will help you have a more disciplined way of life, so you can have more resilience and longevity in your career. You're not going to fall for temptations that might hinder you. Then other composers I know that are composing, let's say, for television. I know one composer, he has a sticky on his computer and it says, "Don't forget to breathe." So when you're under a lot of stress, he takes time out to 5 minutes or whatever to practice mindful breathing. So, you can't write music, you can't compose if you're too stressed out.
That's true.
I mean, you can't, yeah. So in that way, it's helping him compose. It's making him stop doing what he's doing. If he's feeling that he's not hitting what he needs to hit, or he's not getting what he needs to get, he'll take a break and breathe. So it's helping these musicians stay alive, stay focused, and stay productive.
Okay. Find a balance.
According to that.
Yeah, as well, right?
Balance, that's correct. That's the word, balance.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to strive for constantly, right? And, you need to stay kind of focused, but meanwhile, you need to know how to relax when you need to. And this non-judgmental thing, it's kind of a balance thing for musicians. I know, because you need to be on top of yourself and your performance, but you need to, when you perform, you have to let go all that judgments, and it has to flow naturally, and has the beauty of music has to come out after all this hard work there, right? It's
well, hopefully you become the music.
Oh yes, definitely.
There's no separation between you and the music. There is no you. That's different from the music. The music is you, and you are the music.
In our Chang tradition of practice, we call that unification. You and the music unifies, and then you are the music. And there's no you, there's no music. It's only music and you. That kind of thing. Great. So Richard, you sent me this YouTube link. It's called "Darker the Night, Brighter the Stars," and which kind of explains how you connect music and mindfulness. So let's listen to the music now so we can talk about it. So that was the song, Darker the Night, Brighter the Stars. So let's talk about it, Richard. How did you come up with the song?
Well, it originally was an R&B song. And when I listen to meditation music, so much of it is either acoustic instruments, let's say from India, and they'll have tablas and sitars and flutes and stuff like that, or it's electronic and it's quote unquote new age. But my background in production, part of my background is in R&B, hip hop, and jazz. So wanted to create what I call mindful soul. So it's meditation music that's based on R&B, hip hop, and using those harmonies and melodies and even sometimes those rhythms. And so that's what I'm attempting to do, is to create this music that has changes in it for people that like that kind of music. They like R&B, or they like hip hop, and that can follow along all the changes. So hopefully that's a nonverbal guided meditation for them. So they're focused, they're listening calmly, and they're tuning into one direction. Like we were talking about before, you become the music, or you get immersed in the music. So hopefully they're immersed in that, and they're not thinking, but they're following along with the music. And that sort of, I think you said about unification, that unifies their energies, their mental, physical energies into one direction. So it's a form of concentration. I'm not going to claim that this is meditation, or this is just one note on the keyboard of meditation. There's at least 88 keys, 88 different levels and kinds of meditation, whether you're talking about concentration or samadhi in Buddhism, or you're talking about vipassana, mindfulness, or you're talking about non-dual awareness, or rikpa, luminous, primordial luminous, or luminosity in Tibetan. So many different keys on the keyboard. So this would be one key of musical meditation. But hopefully then the music stops and you keep listening to silence, and you listen to your own inner sound and your own inner music.
Beautiful. So yes, unfolding your own stories and listening to that. That's wonderful. But I do have another question, Richard. I wanted to ask you, because you have written so many soundtracks for films and television episodes. Do you have a visual view first, or do you see the episode or the film first before you come up with your music? Does the visual part inspire you to come up with the audible part, or it's the other way around?
It's so many different ways. There were ways where, if I'm working on animation, an animated show, Scooby-Doo, that was an animated movie, let's just say, they show you storyboards. And they say, okay, write a song. Here are the storyboards, the illustrations. But it's not animated. They're just stationary pictures, right? And then you write the song, and then they animate to the song. They move around to the song. In other cases, you get the picture, you're getting the picture, and you have to write to the picture. In animation, it's very technical because you have to hit every spot. It's almost wall-to-wall music. And the characters can do things that, normal people don't do. So there's a lot of music you have to write. Whereas with other forms of writing to picture, it might be different. So yeah, there are times when I write to picture, there are times when they animate to the music, and there are times when I'm writing for a character for her sensibility. There was a character on NCIS for 12, well, I was involved for 12 or 14 seasons, I don't remember how many, and we knew the kind of music she liked. I mean, she liked a certain kind of cyber goth music. So I was writing, knowing what the producers are looking for, knowing what the character likes to listen to. So you're writing for a character. If you're writing for reality TV, now I'm answering overly professional. You said this is shop talk, but I'll just end with, if you're writing for certain kinds of reality, the kind of scenes they're going to be eliminating contestants, let's say. So you write elimination music, which I did a lot of. So, there's so many different ways to do it. It just depends on the program, the movie, or the show. You know?
Wow. So you need to be extremely versatile and, and come up with all different music that fits the storyline the best. That's amazing. I would love to see that process. So, Richard, do you have words for the musicians who are watching you, and how you would advise them to use mindfulness to work with their producing career?
Yeah, I would say that if you look at some of the examples of the greatest musicians, the most successful and popular musicians, let's say Prince, Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, I can go on and on and on, and how they were fantastic musicians with fantastic careers and more esteem and love from audiences than anybody, and yet look how they ended up. You need balance, as you mentioned, you need balance in your life. Music alone is not enough. Music is healing, it is beautiful, but music alone is not enough. You need some kind of other practice. And it's not only mindfulness and meditation, there are other spiritual practices. But it is helpful, I think, in having a sustainable career, to have another practice, a spiritual practice, a practice that gives you a bigger field of awareness, puts you in touch with this beautiful, peaceful energy and power that's within you, that's boundless, that you already have. And because you are musical, you already have the access to this beautiful power and energy of awareness that's within you. Because you are musical, you have the talents and the habits and the sensibilities to access that energy.
That's awesome. I think that's talk about spirituality. We need to have that to balance with our, success or downfalls in our career. To having spirituality and having a mindfulness practice to balance it and to offset. So you did talk about compassion in your book, which I really love. So music, mindfulness, compassion. Would you connect those three for us?
Oh yeah, we talked a couple of times about being a better human being. It's so much about music, and mindfulness or other kinds of meditation is about selflessness. We talked about there's no you, there's just music. And it's experiencing the no self. It's experiencing that, yes, you have this small self, that's this personality and with talents and memories and history and gender and ethnicity and all these labels. Yes, that's true. But you also have this unlimited self, that's this energy of awareness that's really at the base of who you are before thinking, before feeling, before thinking. There's this huge, unlimited awareness that you are, this energy of beauty and peace. Like John Keats said, there is nothing but the fact that truth is beauty and beauty is truth. And so when you realize that all beings are interconnected. Of course, the Buddha made this a very big part of his teachings. Everything that exists is a manifestation of the same emptiness in Buddhism, or of the same source. Then how can you not have compassion? Because if I look at you, you are me, and I am you. Yeah, we're all the same on a basic level. And this is something that's so basic, but we don't live that way. And right now we're living in the opposite way. We see somebody else and they're the other. They're an enemy. They're the opposite. And we don't see the commonality, the interconnectedness, the interbeing that we are. And so compassion is not something that you have to force yourself to feel. Once you see that, and this interconnection, it just follows from that naturally. Compassion just follows from that naturally.
Richard, thank you so much. We're so fortunate to have you today, Richard.
And thank you very much for inviting me. It's been incandescent and a sincere sensation having a conversation with you.
All right. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'll see you next time.